Welcome to Addressing Learner Behaviors. In this video, we're going to walk through behavior responses, different types of learners, and strategies for supporting the learner in a moment of crisis. Behavior response is the process of looking at a behavior, typically a neurosensory behavior, that is occurring and providing an intervention as needed to help support the individual to get back to a state of learning or productivity. It does not make assumptions about why the behavior is occurring. Rather, it provides an intervention to help the individual become more productive. Assuming that a behavior is occurring for a specific reason will likely mislead you in your intervention, so it is best done when the person can be interviewed to understand more about behavior. We will address this in a later training. A behavior response is the in-the-moment reaction to help a person in crisis. This is my behavior response model. On the left, you can see the behaviors that are occurring that show when an individual is starting to become dysregulated. On the right, the responding intervention is an effort to get a specific hormonal release to get the person back into a baseline state. For this exercise, let's look at Paige's brother, Tom. Tom is here to walk us through the behavior model. As we walk through the model, reflect on how you may approach each situation in the moment. Some of the time, Tom is attentive, engaged, and on task in the classroom. During these times, provide recognition in either a verbal or nonverbal way every 2 to 4 minutes to acknowledge what he is doing in the moment. This is how Tom can learn, reinforce positive behaviors and community values. Chunking tasks may make them appear more manageable, which can also help Tom to organize them mentally and to feel that sense of accomplishment more regularly. Tom may start out by maintaining this state for 10 minutes at a time. The goal is to make these efforts in recognition to help Tom eventually engage for longer periods of time. Tom may come across as confused, disoriented, or scatter-eyed. He may have racing thoughts, his toes may be turned in, or all the weight is on one leg. In these instances, I would engage with Tom through recognition again, but as a way to steer Tom towards positive behaviors. For example, I might notice Tom is standing to one side and looking disoriented, and I may say, "Tom, I see how you're about to finish the section. Way to stay on task." Next, you can give Tom a directive because he may be in a better mindset to receive it. Tom might be sitting there with a forward chin jut. His head will tip forward and his chin will fall away from the spine. This gesture typically indicates that the current activity needs to change. It's often preparing the body for some kind of movement or potential confrontation. To interrupt this behavior, the best solution is laughter. Laughter will help release the endorphins in the body, and other strategies could include getting on one's stomach to use compression to release serotonin, using gum that can help increase dopamine response, or ask the student to help with the task rather than complete the task. We may see Tom with his shoulders raised, the pitch of his voice lowering, or the center of gravity moving lower into his hips. When these actions are occurring, we'll give Tom recognition while intentionally lowering our speaking volume. If I quiet down, slow my speech, and provide positive praise, Tom will automatically mirror that same energy level, unless he's consciously thinking about maintaining his agitated state. We'll look at the days when Tom has facial expressions of disgust, fear, or anger. He may be stating that he has strong feelings of frustration, or that everything is too loud. Here I'll yawn in front of Tom, and Tom will probably copy me, since yawning can be contagious. Yawning helps to slow down and regulate breathing so that Tom can more easily access the parasympathetic nervous system. Stretching above the head also helps to realign the posture so that Tom can reduce the stress on his central nervous system. Be aware that your chest position forward of your hips increases the stress. Be sure to straighten through the spine. I always watch how people move to see if their hips are aligned with their shoulders. If their shoulders lead, then they usually have higher levels of anxiety. If their core is caved back, then this could indicate low self-esteem or trauma. Tom was a lot of help in walking through these approaches, but real life doesn't always follow these outlined patterns. Can you think about what a few of these interactions may look like in real life? How would you hope to react in the moment? Be sure to print out my attached behavior response model and tips to assist you in the moments of crisis response. In the moments where we need to support students going through crisis, we also need to consider the type of learner we're working with. Let's take a moment to explore 3 types of learners: the hyper-aroused learner, the hypo-aroused learner, and the anxious learner. A hyper-aroused learner is a learner that is stuck in the red or yellow zones of regulation. Remember those? That's where the learner needs to reduce their arousal levels in order to learn or be productive. Typically, these are younger people who require more movement breaks. For the hyper-aroused learner, my top strategies include inversions. They are an excellent practice that help to balance hormonal levels and regulate the body. Balance activities help to ground the person and provide a proprioceptive activity. All proprioceptive activities are typically beneficial for the hyper-aroused. Diaphragmatic breathing is about slowing the breathing down so one can access the parasympathetic nervous system. There's also applying pressure on the stomach, ears, and neck. It's beneficial because nerve endings are impacted by the serotonin release from the stomach. You could also try alternate nose breathing by breathing in on the right and out on the left. This helps to access the parasympathetic nervous system, unless you can't breathe through your nose, and in which case you wouldn't be able to do this one. Lavender and eucalyptus scents are beneficial because they affect the parasympathetic nervous system and can restore the body to a neutral state. Mint-flavored scents or tastes can help to regulate cortisol levels and boost the body's natural immunity. They also promote muscle relaxation. The aroma actually relaxes the brain. Bubblegum by Pure is typically desirable to young people as it tastes sweeter, but the intensity that it takes to chew this brand helps to regulate by consistency of motion of the jaw movement. It also has a burst of flavor upon chewing, and in most situations, the brain cannot do 2 things with the same level of intensity at the same time. If someone is amped up, then chewing will cause them to reduce their energy level so they can chew more vigorously. The hypo-aroused learner is typically lower energy and can appear lethargic. If you put them in a zone, they would be in the blue zone. They often find it difficult to focus as they lack the mental energy to engage. Teenagers are naturally hypo-aroused early in the day because of their circadian rhythms, but that doesn't mean that they are typically hypo-aroused. It's important not to make assumptions in these situations. For the hypo-aroused learner, my top strategies include vestibular activities. They work great as they rev up the nervous system and typically tap into the sympathetic nervous system. This individual will avoid vestibular activities. They don't feel safe doing them, or they just feel too tired. But they are the person that needs these activities. Scents like cinnamon and citrus will also engage the nervous system and make it feel more stimulated. Proprioceptive activities will also be useful to wake up the system, but may seem even more exhausting than vestibular activities. Flexible seating can be beneficial, as many students who are hypo-aroused naturally, this can be an engaging change. Again, inversions can help to regulate the hormones in the body and drain the lactic acid. This can cause one to feel like their arms and legs are heavy and tired if they have a buildup of this acid. Inversions can also help to release serotonin. Alternate nostril breathing in the left and out on the right, watch out for boogies, will engage the sympathetic nervous system. Laughter also helps to release endorphins, and activities that cross the midline of the body coordinate the right and left hemisphere of the brain and encourage engagement. One type of learner that we will dive more deeply into in later videos is the anxious learner. An anxious learner is characterized by often asking questions that they likely know the answer to for reassurance. They will also sometimes be resistant to participate or will say they don't want to do something, typically more out of fear of failure. There are also physical features. Typically in younger people, it is evident with a protruding chest, and as they get into tween and teen years, it becomes a collapsed chest with a retracted core. Some of the strategies used for students that are hypo-aroused can actually increase anxiety. So it is a good rule of thumb to watch the person and avoid having them engage the sympathetic nervous system. For the anxious learner, my top strategies include pressure on the forehead and opening the front of the chest to help stimulate the vagus nerve, which will help to encourage serotonin release. Diaphragmatic breathing will help encourage the parasympathetic nervous system. Connections with others is the biggest factor that helps support those with anxiety and depression. A supportive peer group is a huge therapeutic modality. The recipe for success is helping, appreciation, and connection. That is how we can create serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin release. When working with an anxious learner, remember that pressure on the stomach releases the serotonin. In order to engage in risk, one has to feel supported. This is a great way to get a dopamine release if it's successful. To do this in the classroom, have the student stand behind their chair and lean over it to work at their desk. The chair puts pressure on the stomach. Another way is to have them lean over in a seated position and get something from under their chair. This creates an inversion, which is a great way to balance the hormones. That wraps up this video on addressing learner needs and our entire neurosensory centering behaviors training. We covered a lot of material in this module, so be sure to refer back and reflect on the content as you experience behavioral challenges in real life. When a person is dysregulated, I like to say, don't poke the bear. If you're out in the woods and you come across a brown bear, you need to remember to shut up, back up, and look down. Do not make eye contact with the bear, as it will be seen as a confrontation. When someone is in an agitated or dysregulated state, treat them just like the bear. Don't poke the bear. They won't make good decisions, and they may say or do things they wouldn't normally do when they're agitated. Head into the next module for a quick knowledge check on the materials so far and access to helpful resources on all of the material covered in this training. If you have any questions about the material covered in this lesson, please feel free to leave a comment in the chat below or reach out to us directly at support@coremethods.com. See you in the next video.